Let me ask you a question. What was the last game that you played where each level felt super memorable and distinct while reinforcing its central theme? For me, it's Sifu. I know I'm late to the party, but I've been playing it a ton lately and really enjoying its art style. If you've seen some of my other breakdowns on the channel, then you'll know that I'm a huge fan of this graphic aesthetic. The team at Slow Clap had a big challenge to overcome when creating this game. How exactly do you keep your world building coherent when you have endless references to look at, unlimited ways of executing your idea, but just a small team of artists? In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the visuals behind Sifu and its levels, checking out some concept art, and analyzing what makes all of them so visually distinct. Let's get straight into it. If you're unfamiliar, Sifu is a beat-em-up game developed by French-based studio Slow Clap and published by Kupla Interactive in 2022. The story is simple. We play as a martial artist seeking revenge for the death of our father, tracking down the 5 who are responsible. And this translates into the game having 5 levels for each boss, with each one showcasing a different theme and visual identity. Each boss also corresponds to a different element in Chinese philosophy Wuxing. By the way, I'm going to be mispronouncing so much Mandarin and Cantonese in this video, and I apologize in advance. I'm a very whitewashed Asian. So each of the levels represents a different element, which in order is wood, fire, water, metal, and earth. As creative director Paul-Émile Boucher explains in an interview, developing a strong framework that each level drew inspiration from kept the team focused. Boucher goes on to explain the number 5 became a kind of magic number for the team. There were 5 bosses, 5 levels, 5 talismans to collect, and this provided the groundwork for development. From here, it was a matter of changing the color palette, shape language, and Wuxing element while servicing Sifu's theme of forward momentum and mastery through practice. By having this framework, it allowed the team to creatively explore each boss and the set piece while still meeting deadlines. Now, I find the biggest part of what makes Sifu so visually and artistically successful is due to the intention behind everything. Nothing in the game is accidental, and the more I researched for this video, the more I grew to appreciate what the team was able to achieve. A core element of Sifu's visuals is having a speed painting approach to its rendering style, in addition with cinematic color grading. Distant objects and background elements are heavily simplified into a few shapes, while our main character and things closer to camera are shown in more detail. Now, this is a pretty common technique that's used in multiple games and films, but I really love looking at it regardless, especially when it looks just like the concept art. It takes a lot of skill to simplify things to their bare essence, and we can see this across Sifu's levels. Before we examine the levels, let's take a look at the design of the Wuguan, which acts as the game's main hub. Straight after the prologue, we begin in this area which acts as a safe haven for us to train. One thing I love about this environment is that we're constantly being reminded of our goal. At the front, we have a detective board where we can collect various artifacts and clues that give us backstory about our villains. And looking out of the big window, we are shown the city where all the levels take place. Sifu is set in a fictional city in China, with each area showcasing a different element of Chinese culture and infrastructure. Taking a look at some concept art reveals that it was always important to showcase the journey you take as you play the game. Beginning fairly humble in the squats, we slowly ascend up the social strata through the museum and the financial district, and finally all the way up to Yang's Sanctuary at the end. Something I do want to point out is that each of the levels' names appear at the beginning written down somewhere in the environment, which is a nice detail. The passage of time is a huge theme in Sifu, from our character aging every time they die, but also how much the game evolves as you progress. The time of day changes whenever we return to the Wuguan. The color palettes reflect the level we're about to begin, whether that's late evening for the club, the dead of night for the tower, or the misty early morning for the sanctuary. It's really cool seeing how all these different lighting setups affect the mood of the same area. This also kind of reminds me of the evolving title menu in Life is Strange, where the time of day and mood changes as you complete the episodes. Another cool touch in the Wuguan is the literal skill tree, which begins small and continues to grow the more we upgrade our skills. Another main theme of Sifu is mastery through practice. So this is a nice bit of symbolism that represents our journey as players. Both the skill tree and the view into the city act as great tools to showcase evolution, which makes things feel like they are constantly progressing. Now, each boss representing a different element also funneled creative decisions in the color palette, shape language, and environment design for each level. For example, the first boss, Fajar, represents the Wuxing element wood. This level takes place in an area called Squats. The inspiration for this area was heavily based off of the industrial region of Kowloon in Hong Kong, with its tall skyscrapers and cramped facade leading us through an urban maze. The color palette here is a mixture of greens and gold tones, which gives off a very vibrant feel to this section despite all the urban decay. In addition, the lighting is set in the late afternoon and is perfect for an introductory level while we learn the game's mechanics. For instance, if you imagine this entire level taking place at night, it might be a lot harder to see enemies moving around while we're trying to learn the game's mechanics. In concept art for the Squats, we can see the different lighting setups that were being considered. Instead of being earthy and warm, which is what we got, we see a few variants where the lighting is much more dramatic. I think the team decided to go a different direction here and reserve some of this emotional intensity for later in the game. We see these darker orange palettes used in the club and the tower as the tension rises. Since the Squats takes place both indoors and outdoors, setting it in the late afternoon also gives opportunity to create contrast through the colder, bluer shadows and the golden sunlight. Something you may not have noticed is that the shape language in the Squats uses a lot of vertical lines. Not only are the lines symbolic of the bamboo we see later with Fajar, but we also see them through metal bars, stacks of money, clothes, windows, and more. These were intentionally placed to strengthen the level's visual identity. As Fajar represents the whooshing element wood, there are a lot of organic materials being used in the props and environment design. Throughout the level, we encounter a lot of messy apartments, abandoned furniture, and rubbish littered about. But as we progress, we start seeing plants and bamboo thickets as well. In Sifu, we begin each level in a real environment before being transported into an epic mystical one. This reinforces the theme of each boss, and in the case of Fajar, it's a lush forest. He's able to grow and manipulate plants to his will, which also mechanically shows up during his boss fight. The second boss, Sean, represents the element fire, and his level design is in direct contrast to Fajar's. Instead of having a gradual, smooth transition into his arena, it's instead abrupt and aggressive. The club's color palette is made up of mostly blue and purple at the beginning, with little hints of red throughout. These are reserved for props like the chairs and lanterns, but also the enemies in the level, which gives contrast to their silhouette in combat. Eventually, the blues are replaced with harsh reds and oranges as you are transported into a burning village. This represents Sean's fighting school, which instead of upholding traditional martial arts values, instead glorifies pain and suffering. All of his disciples wear bandages that cover his literal mark on them, and the entire vibe of this level is that of an illegal underground fight club. The color palette in this level creates very striking visuals while the game's difficulty is slowly increased. At certain points, the fluorescent blue dominates the entire palette, which gives off a very artificial vibe. You can tell the team at Slowclap are super passionate for the action genre based off how many films they pay homages to, and this entire level reminds me of the neon-soaked action of John Wick. The third boss, Kuroki, takes place in my favorite level of the game in the museum, and based on the poll I posted, yours too. It's pretty easy to see why, because there's so many visually interesting things to look at in this level. Kuroki is the polar opposite of Sean as she represents water. Where Sean is fiery, aggressive, and intense, Kuroki is calm and reserved. Instead of reds and oranges, the color palette here is fittingly blues and whites. Her movements all flow into each other, and it almost looks like she's painting with her weapon. But this contrasts too with her level design, as there are a lot of smooth curved shapes flowing up and around the museum. The entire level was also designed around this waterfall, which leads into a mystical environment. It's shown throughout the level that Kuroki had a twin that died, which Slowclap uses to create contrast. There's a heavy theme of duality in the museum, and one element I really love is how this is used in her boss fight. In Phase 1, we fight Kuroki in snow, and in Phase 2, we fight a manifestation of a twin in an arena surrounded by black waves. Since water is the theme of this level, this is an effective way to show the transition of states, from a solid to a liquid. Even the colors of Kuroki and her twin's outfit are inversed. I also really dig the imagery in the second phase, as it's reminiscent of the Great Wave of Kanagawa, which ties in with Kuroki's Japanese heritage. I personally think the entire museum section is just the coolest part of the entire game, and I'm seriously considering making a video where I analyze every single art piece in the level. If you're interested in this, let me know in the comments down below. The fourth boss, Jinfeng, represents metal and is set in the tower. We're now in a tall skyscraper somewhere in the financial district, and here the main color is gold. This is used to symbolize the greed of the corporation, which is also hiding a secret lair of assassins beneath its foundation. Something I like is the gold tones that come from the city lights outside. The whole thing feels super empty to me, like the rest of the city has gone to sleep. Instead of things feeling lively and busy, it's quiet and eerie. There's a lot of blocky shape language in this level too, from the bookcases to windows, marble flooring, and TV screens and monitors. Something I find interesting is that in this piece of concept art by Chen Yang, we can see there was supposed to be a data center in this level, as well as a version of it with golden ingots being stored away. We hear Jinfeng's golden meteor hammer multiple times throughout the level, and it seems like the original intent was to tease the mystical environment through audio waves. We do end up getting a version of this data center later released in the Arena DLC, so it's cool seeing a form of it return, even if it wasn't used in the main story. Jinfeng's arena is that of an ancient court as she passes judgment onto us. Here, the stakes are raised quite literally as the scale of everything becomes larger. We even see the 2 golden lines on her desk earlier, except they are scaled up while we're being judged for our actions. The second phase is mostly the same, except now we're in freefall, just like we were on the elevator a little bit earlier. I do wish that this section had a little bit more going for it, especially compared to the other bosses, but it still keeps in line with the theme of the level anyway. And finally, after defeating everybody else, we arrive at the final boss and main villain of Sifu, Yang. Yang's wuxing element is earth, which is shown through his sanctuary being built on top of a large mountain. Something I really wasn't expecting for the final level was for the entire tone of everything to be serene and peaceful. There are cool whites and grays outside in the misty morning, which shifts into warmer tones for the interior sections. Yang's sanctuary isn't even that of a martial arts school, but a place of rehabilitation and care. This was an intentional design decision by Slowclap, and as creative director Paul-Emile Boucher explains, as our game hinges on the spiral of revenge, we wanted the player to start feeling guilty for their actions by having them attack a serene and balanced environment. This is why we decided on a simple nursing home. When you consider the story implications too, we are expecting Yang to be this giant big villain that we've spent this entire time looking for, and instead we find the complete opposite. All the other wuxing elements also make an appearance in this level: wood, water, fire, and metal. Yang himself is a mirror fight of the main character, having a lot of the same moves and abilities. Because of this, I've seen a lot of people on Reddit name the main character Yin for yin and yang, which I actually kind of like. I think this is pretty fitting to showcase how both characters contrast each other. One went down the path of revenge, and if we're not careful, we're going to be doing the exact same thing. Despite all the serenity of the sanctuary, we can see that Yang still hasn't achieved Wude, which is the game's true ending. The final arena of Yang's fight is reminiscent to the prologue when we fight our Sifu. Unlike the other boss fights, it's not super bombastic, but simple and grounded instead. It's simply raining in the courtyard, and all we have left to focus on is the fight ahead. If we get the true ending of the game, we are transported up into the mountains and achieve Wude by sparing all the bosses. So we can really see that having a strong idea for each level guided every single creative decision being made. This philosophy that Slowclap used by tying in the themes of the game with each boss and having it inform the artistic direction worked in creating a truly memorable experience. Now, normally at the end of these analysis videos, I like to do a demo where I'm actually showcasing how I use this style in my own work, but I want to make this one good. So I'm going to be posting it sometime later in November where I'll be painting an environment from Sifu. I'm also super excited for a secret level which is being made by the creators of Love, Death and Robots, where Sifu is actually going to be one of the episodes. The style already leans itself so strongly to animation, so I'm really excited to see what they come up with. If you'd like to learn more about Sifu's production, I'm going to link a couple of references down below, including a fantastic game developer article that this video was largely inspired by. Thanks so much for watching this one, everyone. I hope you were able to take something away and put it into your own art and projects too. And until next time, take care and stay safe.